Great. So for today's class, we are going to continue with our CSS lesson, and we'll be looking at how to style a list. All right. Yesterday we looked at the box model. We looked at typography, and then we did a little something on how to style our links. We saw some pseudo classes, which we'll be looking more at more of pseudo classes later on, pseudo classes and elements. All right. So let me just create my new file called lists, right? Lists dot html, and let me bring my boilerplate and styling lists, and then let me link it to let me link it to my CSS. So that would be what lists dot css. Alright, and of course I have to create that file lists dot css. Alright, and now let me okay, I think I've already started my project in the live server, so let me just bring this here. 1127, the usual IP. Alright, and this is showing. Okay, so slash list dot html. All right, so we have a blank document open for us. Let me close my file tree, and then we have our usual layout. All right, pick this from here and drop it here. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is let me um, bring my usual H1 and say styling lists. All right, and if you could remember from the HTML lesson, we looked at three types of lists. All right. So first of all, I'm going to bring my UL, which is what the unordered listing, and then I'm going to bring three list items, right? So then I say, let me make this Ghana, then let me make this Cape Verde, let me make this Egypt, and then let me just duplicate this and then make it complete. I guess you guys know what I'm driving at. And I hope I get the spelling of Mozambique right. Okay. Then I'm going down again and let me create an ordered list, not on. Let me create ordered list, right? Um, which is OL. And then you know that ordered list, we explain that it's a list that's supposed to be in order. A list that's supposed to be in order. So when we have our LI times, let me make it 4 here, right? Then I have Africa. I have what? Africa, then I have Asia, then I have Europe, and then let me have America. Right. So we have a list of four countries, and then the list of four continents, right? One being an ordered list and one being an unordered list. Right. So first of all, let me go into my style.css file, and let me go to my typography.css. You guys would remember that we imported a font the other day. Let me just bring it in here, right? And save it. And on my body element, I'm just going to declare my font family. All right, and make it popping. Give it a fallback of sans serif, and it's going to be inherited by all the elements or items on the page. So the first thing we are going to do is what select the unordered list, all right, and then we can give it a property. We can give it a styling of list, or not list style, list style type. All right. And then when we have the list style type, we have a whole lot of different things which we can do, right? And you see that by default, we have these dots over here, and they are called disks, right? That is, so if I choose disks, you realize that my nothing is happening to my unordered list, right? What I can also do is I can change it to what? To square, and let me just make this a little bigger so that we can see the impact. So this was what the disk. Now, when I change it to what? To square, this is what we are having over there. All right. So we can change these markers over here. There are a whole lot of them which we can actually bring. We can bring what? The circle, which is also showing there. Let me look at a few of the suggestions Visual Studio is giving. And I think when we want to look at the unordered listing, those are what applies over there. We have the Armenian, all right, which is more of an ordered listing, not unordered. It is ordered because they're just like the alphabet, all right. So because we are looking at unordered listing over here, let me not bring what's supposed to be for the ordered list, right? So let me maintain this as at circle, and then another property which we can apply is list style position, right? And then when we say list style position, we can actually give it what an inside or outside value. All right. So before we can see this actually work, let me give a text align first of what center. Great. And then let me take off the list style position. All right. So let me reduce this, make my page bigger for this particular instance. Back to my HTML. I'm bringing a line break, a horizontal rule, and then another line break, just so we could see some difference between the two. All right. So, Ebenezer, you're not behind your computer. You're not behind your computer.
Behind, oh, I'm behind my computer.
No.
As you can see,
Okay.
there's my computer. As you can see.
Okay. That's great. So, what we are having here, we are having what we've set align. What we have, we've set what align to what to center. You realize that the text has what shift to the center of that, but then the markers are still aligned to the left side where they are. All right, and that's how it is by
Then
default.
I'll say come to
If
me.
you happen to try this,
Ready, ready.
if you happen to try this,
You feel ready. Then I read them. You feel.
Ebenezer,
When they
I'm
catch them, you
muting you, but you're unmuting yourself.
ready.
Ebenezer, kindly mute your mic. Great. I was saying that most browsers may handle this differently. They may. And so let's just test this in Mozilla Firefox for developers, and let's see how that looks over there. And then we're going to test it in Microsoft Edge as well, and then we'll see how it looks over there. And I think in the past, some browsers used to handle it differently. Changes do happen over time, and so things don't always get to be that consistent. You may realize that sometimes I switch to other browsers to test features, and it's because in the development world, you, the developer, you may be using one browser, right? For now, I am accustomed to Google Chrome. That's what I always use, and most people use Google Chrome, right? But there are some developers who are switched on Edge or Mozilla, and I used to go with Mozilla back then. I don't know what happened when I switched to Chrome, but then your users who are going to be accessing your website are going to be using different kinds of browsers, all right? Some of them are going to be using Chrome, some will be using Mozilla, some will be using Safari, some will be using Opera Mini. some will be using Brave. Are you getting it? And so sometimes, as a developer, when you're creating a website, all right, you should make sure that you test your website across different browsers, all right? The widely used ones are Chrome, Mozilla, and Edge. Are you getting it? But you should try it in what? In other browsers such as Brave, because Brave is beginning to gain some momentum recently. A lot of people are using Brave as well. So try to test the project. So as a developer, you should have lots of browsers. I don't have Opera Mini installed, but you should try to have several browsers and then you test. And I'll give you an example. I'll show an example um, of why you should test your website across different browsers, because we can do a feature. Let me just do something real quick. Okay, it's not concerned to what we're doing, but because this popped in my mind, let me just do something, then I'll show you, right? So let me bring a div and give it a class of parent, all right? Then I'm going to bring a paragraph. I'm going to bring a paragraph, all right? And with my paragraph, I'm putting Lorem dummy text. Let me bring five of them, five paragraphs, all right? Then back in my CSS, let me just squeeze this here for now. Back in my CSS, let me start my parent, right? And let me give it a height of 500 pixels, all right? And you realize that, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but let me change the height to 200 pixels, and then let me give it a background of light gray, and use this light blue background. Are you getting it? So you realize that this is my div. That's my div over here, right? And then the text inside is more than the allocated space, and so it's overflowing. Then I'm going to add a property called what, overflow, and make it what, auto. All right. And you see what happens is that what, I can now scroll through my div. Are you getting it? And you realize that the scroll bar is what, it's showing over there. Are you getting it? And so I'm going to add a property over here, then say what, dot parent, and add a pseudo element called what, WebKit. I'm going to add the WebKit scroll bar. Are you getting it? And give it a display of what, none. Are you getting it? You realize that the scroll bar is hidden, but I can still scroll. All right. Now let's go back to what, Firefox. Let me refresh just to be sure. You realize that it's working in Chrome, but it's not working in Firefox. Are you getting it? So there is an attribute which you have to add to make sure it works for Firefox. And what we did for Chrome is working for Edge as well. Let's see if it's working for Brave, and it's working for Brave as well. Are you getting it? And it's mostly because most of these other browsers are based on a Chromium project, Chrome and Edge, and I think Brave, and then a few other ones are based on one source project. But Mozilla is different, and so it always has its own stylings for some elements which you have to apply. And I'll show you a style which a site which you can test for features and see if those features are going to work for all browsers. All right. So let me just get back to what we were doing real quick. Um, Let me close the Mozilla as well, and then bring back my Chrome just as we were having it. All right. So let me delete this. This is not part of what we were doing today. I just dropped it in my mind and I thought I should cover it before I forget. All right. So what I was saying, we have what, the text aligned to center, but the markers are left on the left. Are you getting it? And so we can actually add a property, and this property by default is set to what, outside. Are you getting it? and that is why we are having it this way. All right. So if you want to change this, you can actually add what the opposite, which is what inside, and then you realize that the markers join the text inside, which is very simple. All right. Then we shall continue. Then let's go back now and start what our ordered list. And then our ordered list, we can also apply all of this over here. But then let's look what our list style type. And I saw a question in a chat box. I'll treat it. So don't think I've forgotten you. Let's start type. And because this is an ordered list, by default it's set to what? Decimal, right? And that is what we are seeing over there. And then another things which you can do is what we can bring Georgian, and you realize that it's changing to a different character code or a different language. I would call it a character code. I think that's a lot more appropriate. All right, great. And then great. And then another thing you can also do is change it to what lower alpha, which is going to turn it to ABC. Then we can also have what upper alpha, and we have it in caps. All right, we have what upper Latin, and I think it's pretty much the same thing. Lower Latin, and it's I think it's also the same thing. All right. Then there are also other ones which sorry. So we have the Armenian, we have the Georgian, we have the Lower Roman, which is going to bring Roman numerals, I think. So when we have the Lower Roman, we have the Roman numerals. We can also have what Upper Roman. We can also have Upper Roman. We can also have Upper Roman over here, which brings the Roman numerals in caps, and that is it. Then another property, which another thing which we can also do to style our list. So for the list, the text align which I added here is not specific to lists, but the list style position. If you happen to add the text align, and let me bring this to center over here, not centers, center. Then you can also bring what the list style position inside, and it's going to work. Somebody is searching if we have alpha alpha. I don't think so. We have lower alpha and upper alpha, which is the alphabet in uppercase or lowercase. And then another thing which we can do is a list style image. All right, a list style image, and then for that we are going to use what a function. I get it, and the CSS function. We'll be looking at CSS functions. We'll specify the URL. I get it, and then let me open my file tree. My file tree over here, I have an image folder, and then inside the image folder there is what a PNG called what checkmark.png. All right. So this is what I'm going to do. Inside my URL, I'm going to go into what my images folder. All right. Then I'm going to select what my checkmark.png. All right. This is what's happened is because my check mark is too um, big, right? So one thing which we can do is we can style the marker. I get it, but for now, let me. One other thing which we can also do is style the marker, and that's what a pseudo element. So for pseudo elements, we have pseudo classes in CSS and we have pseudo elements, all right? And pseudo classes, you usually use them with what? One column, all right? So when we were doing styling of links, we had the hover, we have the active, those are pseudo classes, but we have what? The marker, which is a pseudo element, and you realize that that one has what? Double columns, it has two columns, I get it. And then what you can do to the column, to the marker, we can specify what a font size for it. So we can say a font size of what 16 pixels. Are you getting it? And it's going to affect this particular markers over here. Are you getting it? And then we can specify. So let me change. I think our default font size is 16 pixels. Let me change this to 32 pixels. and you realize that our markers are becoming what? Are becoming bigger. All right, let me just edit my marker over here. Let me increase the size so that it can fit the web page. I'm gonna resize it to like 10%. See, let's see what's happening to our web page. It's still very big. Let me make it another 10%. Let me do the. I think I've made it too small this time, but I believe you guys get the idea of what I am trying to show over here. Then the next another thing which we can also do is what specify a font family. All right, say we have this over here, we can change the font family. So we can say font family, then we can say Korea. All right, then you realize that our markers will change. Then we can also give it a color. So what one thing you can you realize is that while we are styling our main elements, are you getting it? While we are styling, let me just take this out. Let me comment this for now so that it goes back to default. All right, and then what I'm going to do is what I'm going to select the list element. All right, then I can give it a color. You realize that we are styling the OL and then the UL. Right? This all this well, which are what the parent elements, and then inside the parent we have LIs, right? So when I come here and I give a color to what the list element, and I say color, give it a value of red, you realize that all the list elements are red. The markers inherit the color as well. All right. And so suppose we want to give a different styling to the markers. That's when this becomes necessary. So we can give the marker a color of blue, and our markers are going to take up that color. And so these are some things which you can actually do um, with styling links and stuff. All right. Then with all this that we are looking at, we are looking at list style type, we are looking at list style position, and then what list style image. Let me quickly download another image for the check mark, then give it a better size this time so that we can do what we're supposed to do. I think I downloaded this. Yeah, that was my image. Great. So my downloads folder, let me cut this, go back here, delete this, paste this, rename it to check mark .png, open it, and this time I have to be careful with how I resize this, right? So I can give it a 50 pixel by 50 pixel, which is relatively better. Let me check how it shows on the web page, and let me comment this. Let me make it half that size, and this looks relatively better for now. I think we can go with this. In a real world project, will take time to find a better size for it. All right. So what we can actually do, let me comment this out. All right. We can use the list style rather, which is a shorthand property. So instead of listing all these three, what you can do is you can specify the list style type of what circle. Then you specify what your URL, which is going to be images slash checkmark.png. Then you can specify what the position. This time we are using inside, and it's saved, and you realize that nothing has what has changed. So somebody was asking what's the difference between the list style and then the list style type, and that is the difference. This is a shorthand property which You can bring all the values over there here, and it's going to work. And you can just take you can provide some of the properties and leave some of them, right? So I can just say list style image and it's going to work. I can say list style image inside list style. I supply the URL of the image and then the inside, and that's going to work. I can just take this. And one thing you realize is that when I let me give this a square, you realize that the square is showing, and the square is acting as a fallback, right? So for any reason, if this image cannot be located, then it's going to default to what? To the square. So suppose our image is what check marks, which cannot be found, then you realize that it's going to default to what? The the square markers. All right. So that's what this is doing here. It's acting as a fallback. If you don't provide a fallback, then it will go to what the default disk, right? So that's what the list style is. And basically, we've done enough. And then one other thing which you can, one other property you can call on the marker is what? The content property. Let me not do this here. The content property, right? And you can specify, let's say, let me bring this over here. And you realize that all of this the markets are changing, right? So you can supply text or an icon or anything you want, right? So when I just let me pick an icon, right? So I can pick an icon like this and decide to use it as what as my check mark or whatever it is that you want to use for your style, and it's going to work. So you provide a content property, and then you bring the quotes, the double quotes, and then inside that you provide whatever you want to show as what your list style type, and basically that's what it is. Now, if you want to apply this marker, this styling to the marker to only the ordered list, then what you're going to do, let me not do this here. Let me just bring this down. You are just going to specify what the ordered list, right? Then you apply the marker on it. And I think this is not working for this system. So that is what I think the marker has to be called on its own in this instance. All right. What other thing we can do to our list is we can come to the um, list item over here and give it an attribute of what? Start, right? And when we say start at 2, let me go back and comment whatever we have over here. Great. So when we say start at 2, you realize that our Roman numeral, let me change this again to decimal so we can see the difference well, right? So we say start at 2, and you realize that it's now what? It's now starting at what? At 2. I get it. And that's one thing you can apply over there. Maybe you won't want it to start from 1. If you want it to start from 10, we're going to say start at 10, right? And it's going to apply. Then another property which we can apply on our list is what? The reversed, right? And then when you apply it, everything is going to be reversed. So the first one now becomes what? 10, right? Because we're saying start at 10. And because we are starting at 10 and it's reversed, it's becoming what? 10, 9, 8, and it goes down way. Should we take off the start at 10, you realize that it is 1, 2, 3, but it's now reversed, right? Then you can also apply this, right, on one of the list elements, all right? So when we come here, we can say this, and let me take this off. This 1, 2, 3. No, this is not working over here. All right, so it has to be on the current element, which is the ordered list, all right? And you can reverse them. We can also use some pseudo classes to do some more styling, all right? So uh, I can come onto my list element, or let's say my ordered listing, and then I can apply what? A first child pseudo class, right? And then let me clear everything that is here. Then let me give it a color of blue. All right, this should be my li. This is all right. So this is what I'm supposed to do. All right, here I'm applying what this talent to my first child, right? And we use the first child pseudo class, and that way it's going to be applied to the very first element in the list. All right. Remember, we are using li, so it's affecting this as well. All right. Then another thing we can do is what we can use the last child pseudo class as well, and it's going to be applied to the last class. You can also do that and use what the nth child pseudo class and say to, and it's going to be applied to the second element, right? Then you can also apply other values as what odd, and it's going to be applied to the numbers that fall, the elements that fall. So the first, third, fifth, seventh, and continuous. Then we can also use the reverse as what the even, and that's also going to apply to elements that fall within the even numbers. So second, fourth, sixth, and it continues that way. Anybody getting confused? Anybody having any questions so far? All right. So if nobody is having any questions, then we shall move on to look at the very next item which we have planned for the day, and that is CSS display. Right. So let me just quickly close this and quickly go to display .html, and then as well display .css. Close my file tree, come here and this. All right, so we have CSS display. Let me just change this back here. Then let me go back to this. All right, and then I'm importing this. Then body. Then I can find my font family and say poppins, poppins. Then we can also provide the fallback. Junior, at the bag, eh? All right, so we are going to look at what display, and we have lots of properties. So first of all, let me now link to my display.css. All right, and I'm coming here and let me add one each one element, and this this is a heading. All right, having what this is a heading. Then I'm bringing a paragraph and bring this as well. And coming down, then let me add a link. All right, and click here. All right, then let me add a span right here and bring this. Let me give the span a class, um, class of another. Yeah, let me do something like that. All right, and then in CSS, all elements can either be a block level element or an NI element. A block element usually takes up all the spaces that is what available for it, right? And so if I should come here and then I add another header, you realize that the second header is now showing on another line, all right, which means header, but then there's, even if there is enough space, right? So let me take this here a little bit. So even though there's enough space for this header to go here, this is coming down. This shows that what the H1 or the heading elements are block level elements, right? And you can actually see this. Let me select H1 over here and then say background color of red, and you realize that the background is covering the whole space. So this is a block level element, all right? Then a paragraph is also a block level element, right? So when I do this and I give it a background, and let's say papaya whip, right? I don't know if you guys can see that color over there, but you realize that it's also covering. And you may say it's because the paragraph is there's a whole lot of text over there, right? But should we bring just this, you realize that it's also covering up the whole space. And so paragraph, it's a block level element, all right? Then we have our link over here, and then let's duplicate this and see. You realize that the link is now showing on the same line. So the link or the anchor element is an inline element. It's not a block level element, all right? And there are stylings that can be only applied to what block level elements. There are stylings that can be um, cannot be applied to inline elements, and we're going to be looking at a few of them, right? So what we can do is we have our header, and then we can apply styling, and then the span we have over here, right? The span, the strong, the bold, and small, and those other things, they are also inline elements, all right? So what I can do to my H1 is give it what? A padding of, let me give it 20 pixels so that we can see. Let me take one of those off and save and change the background to um, something a lot better. I think this is far better, all right? So you realize that we can set a padding on our heading and it's working. Let's set a margin, make it a margin of what, 20 pixels, and you realize that a margin of 20 pixels now appears all around our element, all right? And let me just put bring let me just remove all the border. So I'm just making a basic CSS reset. I'm just clearing the default borders. Then what is it, margin, right? Margin 0, then padding 0, then right. So that's what I'm doing for now. And then we have then the box sizing. Let me make that a border box. Okay. So we have our padding around our heading element, and then we have our paragraph over here. All right. So we can apply another property like the height, right? So I can say h 20 again, and it's affecting our header element. Let me make it something more than that, like 50. It's also small. Let me make it 120 now. All right. So the height property which we have assigned, it's also now affecting the heading element. All right. And then the same, we can use other properties like the line height also. Now, the same things, we can do the same for what? For the paragraph, right? So let me just bring this, my padding and margin over here. And you realize that it's also working for the paragraph element. All right, let me bring this here and stretch this a little bit. So it's also working for the paragraph element. Then another thing we can do over here, for now, I think we're okay for now on the block element, all right? And by default, this has a display of what? Block. Are you getting it? This has a display of block, which we don't specify because we always use them as they are. Then we have the span over here, which is what? An inline element. Are you getting it? So let me just select it with what? Another. Is it another? Right, that's the class I gave to it. So another. Then I give it a background of, let me give it a background color of blue, right? So the element which we, let me give it a color of white. So the element which we have wrapped around, that we have put in the span, it's now an inline element. And it's being inline means it stays in line with what? With other elements without having to start from a new line. Are you getting it? And then let's see what's going to happen. Let's apply padding. and give it a 10 pixels of padding. Are you getting it? And this is happening here. Are you getting it? Let me increase the padding, and you realize that the padding is working, but then it is what? It's entering into what? The other elements. Are you getting it? So if I should change this to what? To 50, the padding works for left and right, but the top and bottom is going to affect other elements on the page. All right. So the padding top and padding bottom do not work for inline elements. All right. Now let's apply margin and make it 20 pixels, and let's see what happens. Nothing is happening. All right. Now let me bring this here, and this is what is happening. It's shifting. Let me make this big. All right. It's just shifting this and this, and it's happening for left and right. I get it. The margin is happening for left and right. So let me not use the shorthand property. Let me do it one by one so that we see the difference. All right. So we have this showing this way. Then we have padding top of 20 pixels. Then we have padding left of 20 pixels. Then we have padding bottom of 20 pixels. All right. Then we have a padding right p right, okay, of another 20 pixels. All right. And this is happening like this, covering the other elements. All right. This is here, it's working for it, but because there are elements on top, it's covering them. All right. Then let's have a margin and make it m top. Margin top, and let's make it 20 pixels, save, and nothing is happening to it. Then margin bottom, 20 pixels, and nothing is happening to it. And margin left, 20 pixels. All right. Now you realize that after you brought the margin left, a change has what? Has occurred. So the margin works for what? For inline element, the margin works for left and then what? And right. So when we bring the margin right of 20 pixels, it's going to shift the elements to that side as well. So this is happening all around it. Then what we can actually do, if we want all these properties which we have set over here to be respected, then we can change the display, right? So since this is an inline element, we can give it a display property and set it to what? Inline block. All right. And then you realize that all the sizes, which is what the margin top and bottom, which wasn't working, can now works for that particular element. All right. So we can say we're giving it a margin top of what? 100 pixels, and it's going to move everything. Before then, if it's just inline, the margin top and bottom is not going to work. And so we use the display inline block on elements so that we can apply block properties which are for block elements to those inline elements. All right. And a typical example is uh, when you are styling a link. All right. So for we have a link over here. All right. And let me just comment out all my stylings. Let me comment out everything and take away one of my links. All right. So what we can actually do is we can actually style a link as a button. It's one thing I wanted to mention when we were doing the styling of links yesterday, but it skipped me. So we are going to look at it today. All right. So with this link, let me give it a class. All right, class of what link, and then when I come into my CSS, just select it link, and I can give it a padding of what 20 pixels. Are you getting it? You realize that it's, let me make it a bigger padding and see a padding of what 50 pixels. You realize that it's not shifting at the top because that padding is what is entering the elements over there. First of all, let me give it a background color of orange, and that's what you're seeing. So the padding top and bottom is working, but it is covering the other elements over there. Then, yeah, it's covering the other elements over there. All right, this is too much. Let me make it 10 pixels, 20 pixels. All right, I think this is much better. All right, then what we can do is give it a text decoration of none, and all right, that's cool. Let me give it a border radius of 15 pixels. And right now we are having our link element now looking like a button, right? Let me increase this to 20 and make this 30. Then let me increase the font size to 2 rem. 1.5 rem should be okay. All right, so you realize that this link element, although we've given it the style we want, and it looks cool. It's covering other elements. Are you getting it? And what we can do is what give it a display of what inline block, and then now it's going to become what like a block level element. Are you getting? So when we have two of this, you realize that they are still inline, but they are now taking what a property which can be given to what a block element. All right, and when we make it a direct block element, you realize that it will now take all the space available to it, just like the block elements behave. And you realize that this one goes down and the background is stretching, and so what you do is what make it inline block so that it can stay as what an inline element and still take up properties that are made for block elements. So that's one way by which we can go with what the inline block. And then another display property which we have in CSS is what it's none. Are you getting it? And when you go to display none, everything is going to be hidden. So it's removed from your workflow entirely. Anytime you set a display property of none on any element, it takes it away totally. All right. Then another we have other display properties as well, such as grid and then flex. All right. But those are grid box and flex box, and we'll be handling them later. We are not going to go them into the they are full concepts on their own, and we'll be looking at grid box and flex box later. And I believe this what where we are so far, I believe it's understandable. Anybody having any challenges, anything which is quite unclear to them? All right. So if yeah, I mean you can speak. I mean you.
Um, Excuse me, sir. Please,
Hello.
yeah, excuse me, sir. Please, inline block. Please, how is the click here button twice? Two, please.
So I duplicated it on my HTML. So there are actually two of them. That's why it's showing twice
Oh,
over
okay,
here.
okay. Oh, all right, thank you. I went out a bit, that's why.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, all right. Then we'll proceed and then we'll look at the next concept in CSS, which we have for today, and it's CSS columns, right? So let me close this, create another file, and call it columns.css. And then I have columns.html. Yeah, Mio, you still have your hand up. You can speak.
Yeah, I think you are going to my question, so I'm holding on for now.
You have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask how you could use CSS to style a column. Maybe you
Column.
have four columns, yeah, but I think you are going there. So,
Okay. All right. So next thing which we'll be looking at is CSS columns. All right, and we're just going to look at it real quick. Then we'll be done for the day. And going to bring. Um, Let me bring a section. Yeah, section should do. Then inside my section, let me bring a few paragraph elements. All right. Let me bring a paragraph element. Lorem times 5, and then we have quite a great number of text showing over here. All right. Then when we come here, let me just copy this. All right, and close this. Come to my columns.css and paste this. Now let me go back and then link to the columns.css file, and then we have our style showing there for us. Very nice. And then what we can actually do is select our column. All right, section. Sorry, we select our section and then we can give it what, a column count. We can give it a property of what, column count, and then we can set it to 3. Right, and then what happens is that the whole paragraph or all the elements, it's not about just a particular paragraph, but then all the elements in that particular paragraph are now grouped into what, into 3 columns. I get it. And so what actually happens is that these columns are going to adapt to the screen sizes. All right, so we can, if you have a small screen size, it becomes a problem because 3 columns have to be maintained. All right, and you can actually use this to style your web page, but this is not the right way to go about it. We'll be looking at some other concepts which will show you how to arrange columns uh, in your web page as we go along. All right, so what we, another property which we can add to the column is column width. Right, so we can add a column width of, let's say, 300 pixels. All right, and then realize that we still have our 3 columns. Let me inspect the element again. Then let me now try to squeeze my page. And let me check here. We have what? Our column count set to 3. But you realize that the column is showing only 2 over here. So what the column width property does, it sets what? A basis or a minimum value for each column, right? So each column is supposed to be what? At least 300 pixels. So in the event where there are more than 1 columns and the size each column is taking on the viewport area is less than the size given or the 300 pixels, then it's going to break. All right, it's now going to change to what, to just 2 columns so that each column can have what, more than that. I get it. So instead of 3 columns, because the size is not big enough to contain um, all 3 at that same size, which is 300 pixels, you realize that what, it becomes what, 2. And when we get to a place where each column becomes lesser than what, um, 300 pixels, it now becomes only one column, so that that size what can be met. And now that it's only one column, nothing can be done any further. All right. Then we can also apply another property such as what, the column gap. All right. We can apply another property such as I think, yeah, column gap, and then we can set it to 10 pixels, right? And when we set the column gap to 10 pixels, what am I clicking on? Columns.html, all right. And I this here, all right. And let me increase the column gap. Let me make it 50 pixels so we can see the impact, all right? So now we have what, increased the gap, and the gap between each column is going to increase accordingly. So if you make it 70 pixels, then that is going to be applied to it. Then we also have another property which we can apply to the section, and it's the column rule. It's the column rule property, and then we can set it to 1 pixel solid, and Rebecca purple, and it's going to bring what, a divider between, um, a line divider between each of the columns, right? And so we can also make this what, dotted, and it's going to show. Let me increase the width of it. Let me make it 5 pixels so that we can see. And so all this while that I've been applying borders, anytime you see that I apply a border as 1px solid red, the solid is a type of border. So we have solid, we have double, we have lots of them. And so you can play around most of those, right? So we can set the column gap. Let me make it solid, make a purple, and it applies the border, and so you can control the thickness and anything around that. So that's how we have columns over here. Shamil, you said your question was answered. Are you sure your question was still answered, or there is another question which you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I think what I needed is different from this.
Well, okay, so what is it that you needed?
Yeah, for example, you have a whole row which is 100%, and then you want to divide them into three different sections, maybe 33% each.
Into three different
Then give
sections. All right, so we'll be
yeah,
doing that with the grid box or flexbox. So when we get there, you'll understand how we can go with that. I think that
all right,
lesson is going to come next week.
okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Anybody else have any question to ask, anything which is unclear to them? All right, I mean, you can ask your question.
Yeah, please, I want to ask. I don't know if it just me happens to, but sometimes when I use three attributes to a single element, just it doesn't apply. Something like you see the border when I apply, let's say, the pixel size, the border color, how I want it to be, that dashed or double line or something. Sometimes it just how do you call it? Sometimes just one will happen. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say.
So you apply the border like 1 pixel solid red, and only one of those
Yes, please.
happened.
Yes, please.
Can you share your screen right now so we take care of it?
Or it's not on my screen. Like, I'm not using my laptop right now. I'm
at the moment.
somewhere. I'm at
Okay,
school. Sorry.
so let me
But
just,
sometimes when I'm trying to practice, that's what happens. And then I asked on Google Stack Overflow, and they
yeah,
said sometimes unless you use Task Manager to close to end the application and restart. And I'm asking if it happens to everyone or it's
that
just
will
me.
have to close an application when you're applying a border. In an
Please come
instance,
again, please.
you're talking about applying a property like this, right? 5px solid and then a color.
Yes, please.
All right, so now these are three different things. Now, the 5px defines how thick this is. Are you getting it? So, should I make it 20 pixels? You realize that it is thicker. So, that's defining how thick it is. Now, the solid defines what the type of border we are going to have. So, we can have dashed, all right, and this is how it's going to show. You can have double, all right, and this is how it's going to be for you. You can have dotted, all right, and this is how. So I think we have other ones as well. I getting it. And now this controls what the color. So when we have red over here, this is what's going to happen. All right. So these are three properties working on one thing. This defines how thick it is. This defines the type of border we should be having, and this defines the color. So you are going to see just one thing like this. Yeah, Mayo, we can come again.
Yeah, I get all of that. Yeah, you see, what happened was I actually took courses on Scrimba, and then initially when I use it, it works. But then now I run certain these things, and then I don't know if it's just me. I want to be sure if it's just me or maybe it's from my machine or something because I don't understand. When I started the courses on Scrimba, it was working, but then since after a while, I don't know what happened. Since then, it's some way.
Okay. Maybe you should take a screenshot of it. You can take a screenshot of your, what do you call it, your page, right? Take a screenshot of your page, and then a screenshot of the result, your code, and then a screenshot of the results. Are you getting it? And then
Yes,
you send it in the group so that we can make an assessment and find out what the problem could be. Anybody else having any questions so far? All right, so I mean, your hand is still up. I do you still have another question, or it was
Oh,
from?
so, oh no, I'm sorry, but
Okay,
please, from your CSS here, please, how did you I didn't get how you brought in the URL.
you.
I wasn't following at that point,
So
please.
if you want, let me go back. I think when we were working on list, right? So when you want, okay, we are going to do something right now, and then you see how that will work. And somebody asked a question. Let me trace it. All right. So Foley is asking that how do you use image as a background of a website? Okay. All right. Then let's just do that real quick. Let me have this here. Then great. So what we can do is let me pick. All right. So in the column over here, we can actually do that on the body. So columns.css on our body over here. What we can do is what use the background image property. All right. and the background image, then you are going to specify a URL. So I mean, I think this is what you were talking about, right?
No, please. What the yeah, the import. Yeah.
The import. Okay, so we dealt with that yesterday. Uh, okay, you didn't join yesterday's session, right?
Yes,
All right,
please.
so the video is yet to be uploaded. So when I upload it, then you'll get the chance to understand it. But we imported a font from the Google Font CDN, and that's why we are doing that over here, because the font which we have declared over here it's not on our computer. So if I take this off, you realize that it's a different font that is showing. So we have to bring this so that that font can actually work. All right, so on our body, we are now going to define, if you want to, we'll be looking at backgrounds later, but because he asked, I want to just make a quick one on it, right? You're just going to bring in a URL and then you specify the location. So I think I have my picture inside the images folder, so I'm just going to what? Images slash what? BG. All right, then you now see that we have the image as what? As a background. And then another thing which you can do is what? You can use background repeat. You can use background repeat and say what? No repeat, so that it doesn't repeat, because the image is smaller. You realize that it's repeating, right? Then we can also add a property like background position. Then we can say center, right? And it's going to center it this way. So we can say center, center. Okay? And because it's not covering it, we are not seeing that other effect over here. Then we can say background size. All right. Then we can say cover, and it's going to stretch over here. Then we can also say background size what? Contain, and it's going to, the image size is going to show, the actual size of the image is just going to show over there. All right. I have this here. Let me bring my code over here. All right. So that's it about the background images. We have cover, we have contain, and when you have auto, I think it's set to the container, right? So basically, that's how you set a background, and you can set it on the body or you can set it on a particular element. All right. When we get to backgrounds, we're going to be looking deeper. We're going to look at how to set a background image and then also how to set a background video. So we'll be dealing with those ones. Anybody have any questions so far? All right. So if there are no questions, then we'll be bringing today's lesson to an end. Today's lesson is not spanning for the whole of the 2 hours we have designated. As I did mention the other time, some of our lessons are going to be cut short. Some of them may span beyond the 2 hours. So if there are no questions, then we shall bring today's lesson to an end. So thank you guys. Let me quit my recording for now.